Giovanni, the definitive big boss, greatest villain in Pokemon that just keeps coming back. Aside from the endless returns across the multiverse of video games, fans will often share the sentiment of him being one of the better antagonists in the franchise. So is that true? Well, yes, it kind of is, but let me take the time to break it all down and discuss exactly why Giovanni is one of Pokemon's greatest villains. I think we should go ahead and look at him through the lens of the region and scenario he originally appeared in, the story of Pokemon Red and Blue set in the Kanto region. And before we really dive into the man himself, we need to establish all the pieces that fit together. No matter how evil his plan is or how intimidating of a force he is, Giovanni is a character first and foremost. A story is usually composed of three basic elements: character, themes, and plot. The first two being the most important. I already discussed this in a previous video, so let me make it short by stating that characters will disagree on a theme, and that conflict drives the plot to create a story. I hope I condensed it well enough. The point is that we need to identify a theme present in Pokemon Red and Blue. While there can be multiple to choose from and study for the sake of analysis like this, the ones I'd like to focus on are those of discovery, maturity, and inheritance. If I could put them into a few single words, let me explain what I mean. As any fun fact YouTuber will tell you, the core concept of Pokemon was inspired by creator Satoshi Tajiri's childhood fascination and hobby of collecting bugs, as well as seeing the cities develop as he grew older. The beginning portion of the Kanto region has that kind of vibe. There are small cities and towns, one of which the player character begins their journey from, forest, open plains. We're given the impression that we've probably previously been to a few of these, but there's a whole world of even more that we get to explore. The television in the bedroom describes a scene from a movie that is basically a reference to Stand By Me, a film that follows a group of boys traveling out into the woods to see a dead body maturing along the way. Our mother literally tells us that all children leave home someday. The kind old professor gives us a Pokemon completely for free while the neighbor kid goads us on into battle. All of this screams at us to explore. We're promised fields of green grass, dozens of Pokemon that could be our friends, and adventure that we're destined for. The youth of the generation are told that the world is theirs to inherit. But pretty soon we learn that not everybody feels this way and not everything is all sunshine and rainbows. There are drunk old men blocking the roads, some weird people want to abuse and control the creatures that we call friends. Adults tell us that we can't do things for arbitrary reasons. Pokemon can die, cities run rampant with crime, and some are straight up polluted. The final breaking point is Team Rocket. The country we thought was our home was actually controlled by a huge crime organization, using the game corner as a front for their base of operations. The adults in charge either didn't see it, looked the other way, or they were in on it as well. And it all comes down to one man, Giovanni. Whereas the protagonist and by extension the player believe that Kanto is theirs to explore and Pokemon are friends to be made, Giovanni believes the exact opposite. Pokemon are tools that should be taken by force because the Kanto region is his to control. And the fact that the protagonist is a child makes it even more meaningful. It's not just that Giovanni would have such a rivalry with anyone opposing him, it's that he's a businessman, a boss, a gym leader, a seasoned Pokemon trainer. What could a child have that he doesn't? In future material, when it's revealed that Silver is actually his estranged son, we see Giovanni doesn't really give him the time of day. He left him when he was younger and leaves him yet again when Team Rocket is defeated. He doesn't care about the future generation because it's all about him. And the final kicker is when he's defeated as the boss of Team Rocket. For the most part, you think that's the last you've seen of him and continue on your journey. So when you eventually come back to the gym in Viridian City and discover that Giovanni was the leader there all along, it makes for such a great twist. It isn't just because he's the big villain of the game, but because it strikes so close to home, while continuing to show how oppressive he really was in a meta sense. This was the first real roadblock we encountered in the game. The first major time some adult told us, no, you can't because I said so. And it just so happens that person was the most evil in the region. But it's also even scarier because this little stretch of land between Pallet Town and Pewter City, which you had thought was free from the influence of Team Rocket, was never really safe. The city that was only a walk away from your hometown where you would go to run errands was actually a safe space for Kanto's biggest crime boss. And after you defeat him here, he simply runs away. He doesn't pay for his crimes in any significant way, he just gets up and leaves. And we come to learn in the sequels of Gold and Silver that wasn't enough to squash out Team Rocket. They would stick around and even have several contingency plans. Even if we ran him out of Kanto, he's still kind of in control of the situation. But as we know, this wouldn't be the total end for a villain so iconic. With Pokemon's multiverse shenanigans and spin-off games galore, we've seen this guy come back again and again, to the point where people just always post the "how many times are we gonna have to teach you this lesson, old man?" meme. While it's kind of cool to see him continuing trying his best to conquer, well, everything, I feel like that's a bit of a stretch. I think what made Giovanni work was that he really was just kind of a small-scale villain, all things considered. The Kanto region is nothing special, there are no important legendary landmarks like we see in other regions. It's kind of just a quiet countryside that's beginning to modernize. Underneath all of that is a criminal organization that can do whatever they want because they actually controlled a lot of the development. It's a really personal and homegrown conflict. Taking Giovanni and making him the leader of several other major villains doesn't really fit, in my opinion. It kind of feels like if you were to take Kingpin and put him in the place of Thanos. Team Rainbow Rocket does sort of expand on his desire to control, and when you look at it in a more meta sense, you could say that Giovanni keeps following Pokemon fans throughout the years, continuing to refuse letting them grow up and overtake him. I also want to talk about Giovanni's relationship with Mewtwo. More recently, we've seen him using this Pokemon as his ace when given the chance. In the original game, the story behind Mewtwo was a lot more heavily implied, that it was a Pokemon created as a clone to the mythical Mew, which then destroyed the lab it was made in to hide in Cerulean Cave. The anime was really where we got the confirmation that Giovanni was the one who funded the research. And in this movie, we see the two battle alongside each other for a bit, mostly Giovanni controlling it, but then Mewtwo breaks out to continue his own story. I had always thought that the idea of Giovanni also having his hands in genetic research for the purpose of creating a powerful Pokemon was scary enough. Like the fact that we run into scientists in Team Rocket's base is incredibly unnerving. But I had always seen their relationship to Mewtwo as less of a way to make Team Rocket and Giovanni threatening, and more of a way to enhance Mewtwo's story and themes of the role human technology plays in the lives of Pokemon, and what happens when that human technology is the cause of their lives in the first place. This is more explored in the anime than the video games anyway, so I think their connection really works the most in the movie. But all things considered, I think that Giovanni was a great concept executed very well as a villain in the original Pokemon games. Some great villains would come later as Pokemon continued to grow and expand, but for a first go at a story and setting with very personal stakes, he was the absolute GOAT. So let me know what you think about Giovanni in the comments below. Anyway, I've got to get back to defending my home from the evil of greed. Thank you to every channel member for your continued support, especially the Great Gators, Cheeseburger Lasers, Justin R, Cosmo Zero, Lil Switz, Meme Supreme, Mochizuki Yoru, Nomad Nobi, Phantom, Quago, Taishirai, Volity, and Pastel Blood. If you would like to support, get your name shouted out here as well as access to emotes for comments, live streams, and sometimes early videos, you can become a channel member today. You can also follow me on Twitter as well for more memes. Anyway, this has been GatorX, I'll catch you all later.
All new Dark Pokemon and over 100 new cards. Pokemon trading card game EX Team Rocket returns back with a vengeance. Boost of Excel 7.
A new presence has made its way to Alola, bringing a new story with familiar nemesis. Take on Team Rainbow Rocket and take back the Alola region when you help save the light in Pokemon Ultra Sun and Pokemon Ultra Moon. Rated everyone.